Well, a little big piece of our cultural mythology has flown west. Most people were surprised. I was certainly surprised to discover that actor Paul Reubens died just yesterday as we record this. At age 70, he'd been battling cancer for 6 years, and much like another comic genius who I revere very highly, Norm Macdonald, he had the good grace and the fundamental elegance to not say a word about it, and nobody knew he had terminal cancer until he died of it. Guys, it seems unlikely to think that Pee Wee Herman would have such a big effect on certainly on this conservative and a number of others as well, but he really did. There was an innocence about the character that I don't think was ever tainted. I don't think was even tainted by what Paul Reubens, of course, ended up getting in trouble for back in the early 90s, I think. I'm not going to dwell on that. And by the way, I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Out. Scott, I don't know if you're a big Pee Wee fan or not, but the thing about Pee Wee Herman that I think was so iconic was, as I said, it was just his fundamental sense of innocence. A number of people who are maybe a little too old to appreciate Pee Wee I've often heard some people say, "Oh, he's just playing gay." Pee Wee's not gay. Pee Wee's certainly not gay. He's got more important things to do sometimes than hang out with the girls. As he says to Dottie at the end of Pee Wee's Big Adventure, he's got a bike to take care of and other important things to do. But Pee Wee's not a gay character. He was childish innocence in a grown up body, and while, as I said, I was not a big Pee Wee's Playhouse person, the second I saw him in Pee Wee's Big Adventure, I completely got what he was doing. I loved him from the first frame of film that I ever saw him in, and when Pee Wee's Playhouse was really hitting its stride, I was working as doing lights and lasers of all things at a nightclub in Miami. And there was a scene from Pee Wee's Playhouse where Miss Yvonne gets very angry and she starts putting on lipstick in like this in crazy fashion. I put that on a video wall of 25 monitors and just brought the house down every time. Is there something about this guy that's different, Scott, do you think, than just another comedian? Because comedians are comedians, but Pee Wee Herman is a character, and I maintain that he's an iconic part of our character and that he fills a specific role in our society, and I'll get to that in my close, I think.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, really. It is that it's that childlike nature. He's dressed essentially like a grown-up, but a little bit off. Yeah, a
little bit off.
He's got a gray suit, he's got a red tie, and so he's kind of nominally looks like an adult, but his hair's a little weird, his face is kind of strangely colored, and he moves in a bizarre fashion and speaks strangely. And frankly, in his heyday, I don't know anybody who didn't have a Pee Wee Herman impression. Like everybody I knew would imitate the laugh and the way he talked. He really is an American icon in many ways. And again, like you, I'm talking about his public persona and what he created. What I think his genius is, I mean, how many comedians are there or comic actors out there that never kind of get their legs under them and never kind of establish an identifiable brand? And that's really the challenge of comedy. And Pee Wee basically, Paul Reubens basically decided to create a character into which he could pour his ideas and make it identifiable instantly. Like as soon as you saw him, and frankly, as soon as you saw the headline, I think a lot of papers went with, Pee Wee Herman actor dead. If they had just said Paul Reubens dies,
nobody would have known.
Yeah, a lot of people
wouldn't have known who they were talking
Paul
about.
Reubens, yeah. But he created that idea. And through it was able to delight children and adults. And like you, I mean, it's been many years, and I'll probably go back and watch it again. But that movie was great. It was hilarious. It was touching. It was, really, you felt a connection with the character. Everybody's got a little bit of child inside of them. And so, you really had a kind of a bond with that character. There was a kind of innocence to it that most of us don't see in our day-to-day lives. And so Really, really a brilliant actor. And, you might say people kind of make fun of some actors like, Kevin Costner is always playing himself in every movie, for example. Well, Paul Reubens kind of made a strategic decision. It's like, look, I could be one in a million comics, or I could be I could be Pee Wee Herman.
Steve, I think his educational value is important too. I mean, his contributions to U.S. history and architecture, I think, go unsaid. For example, if I were to ask you to describe the motif of how exactly what architectural style would you say that the basement of the Alamo is decorated?
Non-existent. And I know this because I watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure and I saw it on the big screen in high school. And
there's no basement in the Alamo.
I laughed so hard. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that movie. I'm a rebel, Dottie. A loner.
I'm a rebel, Dottie.
And my Pee-wee is way off. It was much better 30 years ago when the movie was fresher in my mind. I think that the key to the appeal of Pee-wee Herman wasn't just that he was hysterically funny. It was this sort of promise that no matter how adult we got, we could still indulge in the innocent childhood pleasures like riding your bike. I mean,
exactly. Story of a man and his bike. I think that's how they advertised Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
It was indeed. And Pee-wee's Play. I had to go back and watch Pee-wee's Playhouse because I hadn't heard of it when Big Adventure came out in 85, 86, whatever that was. So I went back and I watched a bunch of those on cable later. And there was a bit I'd forgotten about that. And this is one of the things that Twitter is just excels at, is people sharing these things he'd forgotten about when an event happens or somebody passes away or something like that. And it's such a genius pairing, so it's so unexpected. One of the guests on Pee-wee's Playhouse was Grace Jones. And the pairing of Paul Reubens' childlike character with Grace Jones, who is this exotic, almost dangerous disco diva, it was genius. And she came on the show, and it was a Christmas episode, and she sang, I think it was Little Drummer Boy, in that gorgeous voice of hers. And I hate that song. Love that performance. So it's not a stretch to say that this character could be opposite of anybody, literally anybody, and still bring the laughs and the good cheer, which was his particular genius. But Paul Reubens, a guy I didn't know much about him aside from the 1991 incident, which again don't let that define somebody.
Which by the way, I think because he was caught in an adult theater. Having fun playing Pee-wee. But I think it probably needs to be said in his defense that this was not something he did in public. It's not something he did in front of children. He was an actor who was popular with children, and I understand the blowback. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been any. But nevertheless, I think that just needs to be said.
But he's also the guy, and this is what I want people to remember, not just the incident, but he's also the guy who his family or his representation released this yesterday. Please accept my apology for not going public with, pardon me, what I've been facing the last 6 years. I have always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you. That's the guy. And it wouldn't be complete without giving a huge shout out to director Tim Burton.
Absolutely, who got started on that movie.
Not just that, but that made both of their careers huge. Tim Burton, who directed Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and Paul Reubens, who played the character, of course. But after the 91 incident, Paul Reubens was unemployable. Nobody would touch this guy with a 10-foot pole. Tim Burton took a risk and cast him as the Penguin's father, who's seen in a sort of an extended cameo at the beginning of Batman Returns with Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito,
really
and Michelle Pfeiffer. And he owned it. He was just absolutely perfect in the role. And it escapes me for the moment who played the mom, the wife. I'll have to look that up later. But by taking a chance on a big budget movie that was the most anticipated sequel maybe since Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi when Batman Returns came out in 92, for Tim Burton to take the untouchable Paul Reubens and put him in that role right at the beginning of the movie. That was a daring move, a great gesture of friendship, and because that brought Paul Reubens back working in Hollywood again, we all owe him a debt. And thanks for all the great work, Paul, and thank you, Tim, for making the last 2/3 of that career possible.
And people cheered when they saw him in the movie theater. The famous dinosaur park out at the end of Pee-wee's Big Adventure is just out past El Cajon Pass, out in the general vicinity of Palm Springs, and I never drive past that without thinking about that movie and getting a smile about it. So I'll just close with two things that I think probably mentioned that are something to think about. From a professional point of view, from the craft point of view, Pee-wee accomplished something that I've not seen, that I don't think has been done since him, with the exception of one case, and that's Napoleon Dynamite. I've never seen a comic own a character that went into the pop culture mainstream in such a way that they became absolutely iconic. It's so easy to imitate because it's so precisely accomplished. If you look back at the history of comedy, you've got people falling down and slapstick, and you've got vaudeville and pies in the face and all the rest of it. Then you get into the area of guys telling jokes, and somewhere around the 60s or so, you start getting comedy as serious business with George Carlin and Mort Saul and all of these guys making important political commentary. But then in the 70s, in the early 70s, mid 70s, something really changed, something broke, and I think the person that broke it was Steve Martin. Steve Martin was a comedian who said, I'm going to be allowing you to laugh not at what I'm saying, but how I'm saying it. In other words, what the comedian is the joke, not the comedy. It's the comedian that's the joke. Steve Martin really nailed that, and Pee Wee Herman, to me, from a purely craftsmanship point of view, had the genius to make everybody watching him know that they were in on the same joke, and he was in on it too. He never once cracked. He never commented on Pee-wee. You never saw him commenting on the character. He just played him straight, and that's why people loved him. But I think Pee Wee Herman's role in our society is actually much bigger than that. We look at ancient mythology, and we see the same iconic characters appearing in Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, Roman mythology, every mythology, Norse mythology. And one of the recurring characters that you get is the character in Norse mythology. It would be Loki. In Greek mythology, it would be Puck or Pan. It's the mischievous monkey god. It's the god of mischief. It's the usually small, usually weak character who is able to create mischief all around them. And in a world of ongoing perpetual catastrophe, ride their Schwinn bicycle with absolute calm and impunity through this cyclone of catastrophe that is occurring all around them, and they emerge completely unscathed by this.
I'm trying to use the phone!
He's Puck and he's Pan. He's the god of mischief. And he is going to be deeply missed, I think, in a society that is known for its loss of innocence, that the trademark of the modern era is a loss of innocence and cynicism. I don't think there was a cynical bone in Pee Wee Herman's body. I don't think there was a cynical bone in Paul Reubens' body. And in an age where cynicism and the poison that it brings with us has caused so much damage everywhere, I'm going to miss this monkey god very, very much. I'm going to miss his love for his bicycle, and I'm going to miss the idea that a grown man could put on a red bow tie, a gray suit with pants that are too short, red lipstick, and just smack his lips and look at the sky and not have anybody do anything at it but feel good and laugh. So, Paul, I'm glad I got a chance to be here while you were here. Off you go now to Comic Valhalla, and it's tempting to think about people riding into the sunset on a horse, but I don't think anybody has any difficulty whatsoever imagining this little guy in this gray suit riding off into the sunset on his Schwinn, trailing the streamers from his handlebars. That's how I'll think about him. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Right Angle.